Welcome back, everybody. Last time on my channel I talked about the D&D starter kit and what else you might need to start the game. Today I wanted to come in and show you kind of what you're looking at if you go to the next level. So this right here is a 34.5 by 48 inch vinyl playing mat. It's got the hexagon grids on one side. On the opposite side it has square grids. Now when we first started playing, we was playing with the hexagon grids, but I personally prefer the square grids. It makes things easier whenever your players are asking you questions as far as trying to flank enemies and things like that, or get around terrain. The square grids just work out better in my opinion. It also works out better for drawing, especially if you're like me and not a very good artist to begin with. This was a map we had previously used of a small broken down castle. And this cost me $40 at a local shop that we have in my town. So the benefit of having the vinyl map, it allows you to draw everything out to where your characters can, or to where your players can see it. It allows for, in the DM's case, an easier way to provide immersion into the game. It also makes combat scenarios easier to deal with because this game's based on imagination. But the more you have to think about without being able to actually see it, the harder it gets to keep up with, especially in some of these scenarios. And this allows you to take off some of that burden. The downside of using the vinyl map is the fact that you have to, every time they move to a different room, you have to draw a new room, or if you draw the entire map out, it takes a lot of time to draw out all at once. So it does take time. And the more time you take doing it, the less immersion and fun that your players actually have doing the game. On the bright side, with the vinyl map versus the boards that they put in the D&D starter kit, the laminated boards, it's much larger, obviously, so you can put more information on there. It is also, with the vinyl instead of the laminate, it allows you to use dry erase markers. And the benefit of using a dry erase marker is the fact that once you apply it, you can't smudge it with your finger. So whenever your players are actually moving their pieces across the board or touching the map and pointing at it, it's not going to smear the walls or anything like that. And then later you come in with a wet towel and wipe the entire board off. The marker itself won't come off until you actually apply any kind of moisture and wipe it off. Now with this playing grid, it's truly up to you on how you want to utilize it. There are several companies that make 2-scale figurines for both player characters and monsters. And most of the monsters have been made. If you can't find a specific monster, there are also several companies that will 3D print them for you. But that usually ends up being a little more expensive. You can find some of the people that are reasonably priced though. You just have to do a little bit of searching for it. That being said, they are expensive. With my first campaign, I bought all the figurines along with the starter kit, and it cost me roughly $150. Now that was me buying extra on the monster figurines so that if I ran into a scenario I could use them if I had to. But that's not something you have to do. You can buy these a little bit at a time. You can choose not to buy them at all. You can use pennies and quarters. That would work perfectly fine. Just use your imagination a little bit and use the pennies for your monsters to show that this is their location. That being said, if you was going to do that, I would recommend taking a permanent or a marker and marking just a small line on one edge of the penny for in order to show which way that the monster is facing. That only matters if you're using flanking tactics. So if you in your game allow for them to get a bonus for being behind an enemy, then it would matter which way the enemy was facing. Now these figurines are actually pretty well detailed. The standard company that most stores will carry was a company called WizKids, and they carry everything from several character concepts, so humans, elves, pretty much any race you can think of, and several of the character classes that those races are usually played with. They also have a large majority of the small monsters, medium monsters, and large monsters. The large monsters, though, they start to get a little bit scarce. And usually when you start looking for the large monsters or the gargantuan monsters, that's whenever you have to start looking into companies that 3D print these for you. Now with the figurine, they come with a small black base plate. And the purpose for this base plate is for size. It is actually scaled to size based on the information out of the player handbook as to how much space this creature is actually supposed to take up on your board. Some of the larger creatures, you don't have to have the base plate on it in order for it to stand up, but I would still recommend using it because it actually takes up the appropriate amount of space on your map. And as you can see, with the hexagon squares, with the hexagon grids, like I was talking about earlier, the monsters don't quite fit in them appropriately, and you start having more issues with that when dealing with a combat scenario and your players asking if they're close enough to attack or if they're surrounding the enemy or not. Because a lot of times with the hexagons, it just, like I said, it just doesn't quite fit right. Thanks for watching, everybody. On my next video, I'm going to show my current setup, the pros and cons I've ran into using it, and roughly how much it cost me to put together. Until next time, happy gaming, everybody.